shit.
This is why I IGL'd for the other trio as well. I've always been an IGL. Oh fuck. Oh my god, what? Oh my god, I don't know how this just happened. Oh my god. Why is that controlling?
From FNCS champions to not making it to heats. What went wrong for Mongraal and Mitr0? In Chapter 2 Season 4, things were looking fantastic for Mongraal and Mitr0. Throughout the entire FNCS, they were proving that they were two of the top players on the region, and they did this throughout the entire FNCS. They came into the FNCS season in the FNCS warm-up, placing first in the finals, and that impressive consistency continued throughout the qualifiers. In Qualifier 1, they placed 7th, in Qualifier 2, they placed 3rd, in Qualifier 3, they placed 11th, in their heat, they then placed 4th, and in the finals, they took that first place slot, picking up the Axe of Champions for themselves, solidifying themselves as some of EU's best players. However, behind the scenes, it wasn't all what it seemed to be. As soon as the season was over, and even though they had won the FNCS Championship, Tayson split with Mongraal and Mitr0. Many consider Tayson to be the best player in the region, if not the best player in the world right now. And he said firstly that he did not enjoy playing with these two, but on top of that he said that they don't listen at all and that they're not scrimming and they're not practicing. Now, despite the fact that they weren't really practicing or scrimming that much, the fact that they managed to be so good really speaks to how good all three players here are. Mitr0 and Mongraal in terms of just sheer fighting ability and incredible performance mechanically, and then Tayson's ability to IGL this team as much as possible. And obviously he's an incredible fighter and player himself, being the FNCS solo champion. So at the end of the season they had no trio, and then the new season drops, and something that drastically different happens to Mongraal and Mitr0, and that is the removal of the pump shotgun.
They're forward the pump. They're forward the pump.
We all know how much Mongraal and Mitr0 absolutely love the pump shotgun, but I think a lot of this is just due to the fact that they really just love the pump and they love the feel of the pump as well. So not having the pump in the meta is very demotivational for these guys. So Mongraal takes a break at the start of Season 5, and Mitr0 is playing a lot of COD.
Sup my G!
Mongraal comes back from his break and overall seems to be refreshed and in a good spirit and looking to play. And at this point, Benji also splits up from Savage and Leche as his trio, as they didn't really perform as well as they had the potential to in Season 4. So MMB is back, baby. And for anyone unaware, back in Season X of Chapter 1, these guys absolutely dominated the qualifiers. They got an absolute bag, and it was a real spectacle to watch how good these guys were all the way through the qualifiers of that FNCS. I think many of us out there have very, very fond memories of just watching these guys stomp every single team in Retail Row during those qualifying weeks. It was something absolutely spectacular to watch. And in their first Cash Cup back this season, they actually ended up placing 5th. Everyone was getting extremely excited about this trio and how they were performing. MMB is back, and not only that, in their first Cash Cup, they're in that top 5 slot, placing 5th. It all seems to be going very, very well. However, when you take a closer look, there are signs of cracking. If you start to look into that placements, that weekend there was a DreamHack Opens, where Mongraal and Mitr0 had placed 662nd out of 1,000 teams in the DreamHack semis, failing to make finals by quite a significant margin. Then, following that up, the next week's Cash Cup, they ended up placing 598th. So from the start, they had a really high peak, seeming like things were going to go very, very well, placing 5th in that Cash Cup. However, after that, 2 following tournaments, they failed to make the top 500, which for a team of this caliber should not be too much of a difficulty. However, that next Cash Cup after that, they came back, and this is the one before the FNCS, they ended up placing 11th. So, seemed like they were extremely inconsistent, but really had the potential to do well in these seasons. The first qualifier of FNCS opens up, and in round 1 they end up placing 818th, just qualifying them through by an inch into that next round because they just managed to get this through in the final game. In that round 2, remember in the FNCS there are 4 rounds, and in round 2, to make it through to round 3, you need to place top 250. They ended up placing in the first week 308th. So in week 1 of the qualifiers, they just scraped it through round 1, and then they failed to make it through to round 3 from round 2. Overall, the spirits were pretty low if you watched the stream that day. After it was over, obviously the team was not very happy at all, and there was kind of just this silence. 3 players of such a high caliber not being able to make it even into a round 3 of this tournament was definitely really disappointing for the team, and it was really sad to hear. This was on Saturday, and on that Monday there was another Cash Cup, and they ended up placing 36th. So yet again, they're managing to place high in this Cash Cup, but still be very inconsistent in some other tournaments. But unfortunately, this was the last time that we saw MMB in a tournament, as Benji decided to split off and go and play with Matzo and Amplify. Clearly this was a good decision for Benji Fishy, because that weekend in Qualifier 2, they managed to place second, qualifying them through to the semi-finals. So that 1 week split for them was definitely worth it for Benji Fishy, and clearly was the right decision. However, what happened to Mongraal and Mitr0? This week they played with Quinton, someone I've seen them play with previously, but not really sure how well they flow together and how well they're meshing together as a trio. When it came to playing FNCS, well, they didn't play very well at all. They ended up placing 1,642 in round 1, not even making it through to round 2. And I'm sure there's a lot of you out there who actually managed to play the FNCS and made it past round 1, and this team with 2 FNCS champions didn't make it past round 1. This was sheer silence. Once this was over, I think the teams knew just truly how frustrated they were, and I think this is actually the real turning point for Mongraal and Mitr0. 2 FNCS champions who were held up so high on a pedestal and have been for so many seasons after this, and players who have such a big potential to perform well in these open tournaments, in the semis and in finals levels, struggling and failing to make it through an open stage format is a real eye-opener for this team, and that became very, very clear. Mongraal almost instantly tweeted out his motivation was up and he was ready to grind, and I 100% believe that this is true. You have to get into their mindset a little bit. Mongraal and Mitr0 played with Tayson in Chapter 2 Season 4, and they won the FNCS Championship without really practicing that much. Remember, this is why Tayson split up with them, because they weren't practicing that much, they weren't scrimming, they were just playing a lot of arena and practice on fighting, which obviously very much so helps your fighting abilities, which they're very good at, but they weren't training the fundamentals of their rotations and overall game plan. So they probably were in the mindset that they don't even need to practice that much if they want to place highly. However, with the fact that this meta does not have pumps, which does not favour their playstyle, it's much more difficult for rotations because you need to be a lot smarter on your rotate, so not practicing scrims, not practicing your rotates will harm you much more. They probably just thought, it'll be okay, we'll manage to just perform 1 week, we'll make a top 10 and we'll get there. However, at this point, once they've failed to make it to a round 2 in an opens, clearly this is a turning point in their head saying we need to actually put in the work at this point and we need to practice. And Mongraal even tweeted saying how he was so motivated to play right now, they just need a third to grind with all week. So they picked up Ibuhai. Ibuhai is no poor player by any means. He ended up placing 13th in the Grand Finals last season and 8th in the Chapter 2 Season 2 of Duos. So definitely a good player, potentially not an FNCS champion level of player, but given where Mongraal and Mitr0 were, Ibuhai was definitely above Mongraal and Mitr0's current skill level since they hadn't been practicing as much. So I do think this is probably an overall good pick. They practiced during the week and they even scrimmed. Now we don't know how those went because there was no streams, we can't see them, but we do know in fact that they did scrim, which is very unlike Mongraal and Mitr0 generally. So coming into Qualifier 3, in the opens they placed 448th, their best placement yet. Then in round 2, 4th, so a fantastic placement for them, and again, their best placement overall. Round 3, they ended up placing 51st, so just out of the qualification threshold, which was 33rd. Now, there are a lot of teams, to be honest, that don't make that top 33 threshold. It is really tough, and I honestly think, watching the games, that it could have gone either way. One good game could have put them over that threshold to qualify them into the round 4. And honestly, I 100% believe that if these 3 stuck together and practiced through the entire season, they would have easily made semi-finals and easily made finals as well. This team played very, very well together because they actually put in practice for a week. Mongraal and Mitr0 played barely anything in the lead up to this. Then they got that reality check in that they couldn't just play like that over the time, grinded for a week, practiced as hard as they could, and look at the improvements that they made. They placed 4th and then 51st when their previous best placement in these qualifiers was 308th. So a huge increase in this time. People are sending a lot of hate to Ibuhai, but yet with Ibuhai, this is their best placement they've ever made. So, are Mongraal and Mitr0 washed? Absolutely not. In no way are these 2 players washed. You can't go from being an FNCS champion to just suddenly being very, very poor at the game just because you're washed instantly. Clearly, their lack of motivation for this season and the fact that they just didn't play that much and didn't practice was what changed their placements so much. If these two get a fire under their belly and continue to practice and continue to play an absolute ton, they will be at the top next season. You can absolutely guarantee that. Hope you guys enjoyed this video and learned a lot. If you wanted to see more about Mongraal Mitr0 when they're doing successful last season, I have a video here, and I have some box fighting video tips from Mongraal as well here. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already. Peace.